Imagine TikTok being so powerful that they actually help you identify the person that almost murdered you. On my For You page the other day, I found this viral video that you guys might recognize, which states videos I took before almost being hunted and murdered. I clicked on her page, listened to her story, and was like, I have to know more. So I reached out and got the full thing. This is the case of Flowers Don't Growl. April 29th through April 30th of 2019, Taylor and her boyfriend Chris decided to take a trip to Falls Creek Falls, Tennessee. Taylor was 5 months pregnant at the time, so they figured they needed one last little trip before they were going to have a baby. And Taylor swore that Chris was going to propose. So that's why she documented so much of this trip, not even realizing that later on it was going to be used as evidence. So they set up at their assigned camping lot. They spent their time hiking, exploring, having fun. Taylor would collect flowers along the way to document it for memory's sake. But please keep these flowers in mind. And then on the second day, everyone from their assigned area was gone except for them. So they were more alone than before, or so they thought. Welcome back to part 2 of Flowers Don't Growl. So later in the night on their last day, they ended up hearing a loud crash. There's very windy roads nearby, so they figured that it was a wreck. And just to make sure kids weren't involved and that everyone was safe, they got out of their tent and ran over to the crash site, which was maybe half a mile away to go check on the people. The sheriff ends up showing up and it's like a DUI situation, but everyone ultimately was okay. So before heading back to their campsite, Taylor says she has to go use the restroom. So her and Chris walk over to the bathroom so she can do her thing, and in the distance they see a light flickering. And as it gets closer, they notice that someone is running with a flashlight. So they're both cracking jokes to each other like, oh my gosh, this guy really has to go to the bathroom. But once he approaches the restroom, he ends up stopping right at them instead of actually going into the bathroom. And states, and I quote, "Wow, you guys are fast." Creepy. Taylor notices that he has a weird smile on his face and feels really nauseous but just associates it with the pregnancy. So just to be nice, they continue to have a conversation with him. But ultimately, this is where things go wrong. Part 3 on Flowers Don't Growl. So Chris and Taylor continue their weird interaction with this man. Chris explaining that they got to the wreck fast because they wanted to make sure everyone was okay. And the guy goes, yeah, I guess I'm just used to it. And Taylor's confused because like, used to what? Hikes? Car wrecks? They ask what he does, and he says he travels a lot and likes to go camping. And Taylor, starting to get very uncomfortable now, tells Chris that, hey, they need to go back to the campsite because the police will be over there waiting for their statements. Just trying to make an excuse to leave, and Chris could tell it was BS. And as they start to take steps back, he starts to take steps towards them, asking questions like, hey, how long are you guys going to be here for? And his hand kept playing with his hoodie pocket. Chris was starting to pick up on the message as they continued to walk backwards, while the man followed them forward. And then this guy decides to tell them a little story. He was like, car accident. It got me thinking this morning as I was hiking and I passed these flowers. I stopped because they were so beautiful and I heard a deep growl and it scared me. And it makes me think, you never know what day is going to be your last. That's when they saw the knife. 4 to Flowers Don't Growl. So this is when Taylor noticed the outline in his hoodie pocket was the shape of a knife. It completely clicked for her and she told her husband that they needed to run. He looked at her like, what's going on? And she just states, Flowers Don't Growl. So they took off running, and this is when he took off chasing them. And I'll show a map of where exactly they were chased. This is where Taylor and Chris ended up, and this is where they last saw the guy chasing them. And they made it all the way back to the crash site, and luckily the police were still there. They told them what happened and made a report. And 2 of the cops went out looking for him but couldn't find him anywhere, while the other officer accompanied them back to the campsite so that they could pack up their stuff and leave. They tried to get updated on their case later on, but never ever got an update. Having the baby and it being a couple years later, Taylor sits down and ends up making a TikTok. It goes viral and a bunch of people start to DM her with potential suspects. Taylor stopped looking at her DMs because it got so emotional, but one user that messaged her lived in the Falls Creek Falls area and had followed a particular case. She opened the DM and saw the man. This is James L. Jordan. Okay, so here I am with part 2 to my paranormal story. As you remember, the lady said that the rotting of the house was going to get a lot worse right after we got off the phone with her. Soon after this, the ex that I had went through a breakup with ended up stalking me and coming by the house, and we got into a massive fight. Literally, the next morning, the roof collapsed. I am inserting a picture now. So we were like, we need help now. When she came over to do a cleansing, she kind of gave us an idea of what she thought was going on. Neither of us were in like super great areas of our lives, so whatever had just attached itself to the house was also feeding off of us too. The cleansing involved everything you can think of. Putting crystals on all the window seals, putting crosses above all the doors, lining the entire house in salt, throwing holy water on us, and telling whatever was there to leave us alone. I also forgot to mention that there was a creepy shed in the back that the people who had lived there before had put like religious quotes all over the wall. Things pretty much slowed down for the most part after the cleansing, but follow from our content. My paranormal activity story has been requested so many times, so here it is. So back in April of last year, I had went through a breakup after 5 years of dating. And I moved in with a friend who had just recently purchased a house. She worked night shift as a respiratory therapist, and when she would come home, she would often see shadows hanging over her. We kind of just thought she was tired, so we didn't really look into it. But a few weeks in, I started to get sleep paralysis, which I had never gotten before. I never saw anything during these episodes, but I could always hear a woman laying next to me, and I could physically feel her petting me. My friend began to get some night terrors, and we started to see some black spots on the ceiling. One night, I came home with a friend, and from the back, we both heard, "Hey baby, are there any people here?" We both just looked at each other. Like, "Did you hear that?" "Yes." "Did you hear that?" "Yeah." So we immediately called my friend and she came home. We ended up having to get in contact with someone who could do a house cleansing. She warned us that we had both let something in and that there was a negative male presence around the house. She also said that the rotting of the house was about to get worse. Like and follow for part 2.
So this is the story about a time I dated a sociopath. I went to a friend of mine's birthday party and met this guy. He was really cute, we made great conversation, and he also had a job at a really well-known store. However, I was flirting with his friend a lot more, which I think actually is what attracted him to me. With each bar we went to, he kept trying to get closer and closer to me, and by the end of the night, he asked for my number. I said sure, and a few days later, he called me and asked me out on a date. We decided to go for a hike, and this is where the weird interactions start. He brought up the fact that I'm going into counseling, and that's what attracted him to me because he feels like no one can figure him out. He talked about how sales is the best job for him because he can always temporarily put on masks for people and be whatever a person wants him to be. But it only lasts for so long. He could never keep a relationship for more than 3 months. He said he couldn't keep up the act of what the other girls wanted him to be. Not long after this, I got a call from his cousin who I'd never spoken to before telling me to get out. Follow, share, and I'll do a part 2. Alright, this is part 2 to the sociopath story. So that was extremely sus of a cousin to be calling whenever I hadn't even met him before. He expressed that this was a pattern for him. To find girls, date them for a while, infiltrate their life, and then leave them and have no guilt. He also expressed on multiple occasions that he's never felt heartbreak before, even though he's had multiple breakups. The girl that he was with before me had multiple kids. He came into her life, pretended to be a dad figure for a little bit, and then left her. I didn't know that story till later, but I was horrified. I continued to go on a few more dates with him, and he told me everything I wanted to hear. He would talk about spending holidays, meeting my family, potentially buying a house for us, and I just got sucked right into it like probably everyone else was. Then a few hours after we had a really good date, he called to say he was confused if this was the right timing for us or not. I just kind of accepted it and was like, okay. However, a day later, he started dating my best friend's little sister, who was freshly out of high school, and this man's 27. And that's just what he does. He just gets off to the heartbreak because he emotionally can't understand it. Follow for more story times.
So this is a story time about something that happened last weekend. So I've been going on dates with this guy that I met on Bumble. We've been going downtown every weekend to play arcade games. We've been talking long enough to where some of my friends have wanted to meet him. So a group of my guy friends stopped by to say hi. One of them swears he has really good intuition, and he immediately liked him right off the bat. The other one, however, decided to befriend the guy that I was on a date with, and then slid into my DMs 3 hours later.
Yeah, that pissed me off.
I mean, it was pretty bold.
That was so unnecessary. Yeah, I should really beat his ass for that.
I honestly feel bad for him. But yeah, it was pretty petty.
Liz, I'm beating him up for that.
I don't really want to cause a fight.
I do.
I'm honestly probably never going to post this audio. But if anyone's listening, I guess share and follow for a part 2.
Yeah, share and follow if you want me to beat his ass.
Oh my god. Yeah, there's really not anything for a part 2. Yeah. Just don't beat him up.
I'm gonna beat him up.
Also, can I do your makeup next?
Nope.
Anyways, you guys should follow Jeremy so that he'll actually post on his TikTok.
Why don't you block my view?
Also, let me know if you want me to actually do combined story times together. Or stop laughing at me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that funny. I really don't know what this was. I wasn't actually going to do anything with that audio, but I thought it might be funny to share. So I'll be back with my normal story time soon, so follow if you want to see those. Update. It's been a second since I filmed this, and the last video that I posted just stirred the pot. Anyways, story time soon.